Yes.
So my best friend, Erik,
Hey, Karl.
second time again on this exhibition on
Yeah.
animation
Yeah, indeed.
as a visitor.
Yeah.
So what are your experiences? You've been here for the debates, and you've been here
Yeah.
now as some kind of a visitor.
Without any stress.
Without any stress. You shouldn't have any
But-
stress. We're just warming up to get to the essence of the story. So what are your
Yeah.
opinions on animation?
I was here 2 years ago with a
Yeah.
booth, but then still with the digitalization background. So
Mhm.
you see it differently now as a visitor. Um, it's always surprising how big it is, how many people. If just
Yeah,
I just
sure.
arrived here on the parking, it was full. I really had to search for a spot, and also on a Friday, it shows that there's a lot of interest on the broad topic of industry digitalization and of course the cybersecurity part. So very interesting to see. I missed yesterday, so I can imagine Thursday is always the most busy day, and also with the nocturne. So I don't know how did you see it?
Let's say that I slept something like I think 5 hours.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was so up on adrenaline that I even had to listen to one of my own boring podcasts to get asleep. So, but that the people who might be listening or listening to what you're bringing, it's a good tip for your health if you don't find the right way to get asleep.
Let's-
You definitely listen to the podcast of Indusruptiv and friends. Now you're not as an exhibitor, but you are always loyal exhibitor on hobbies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
Seventh
Purely out of
time.
the strategy of an exhibitor. What is for you the difference between an exhibition like this one and an hobbies?
Yeah, I think Abyss is much more on digital and certainly the last edition on cybersecurity,
Mhm.
where today it's broader, it's more automation oriented, or what we call OT oriented.
Yeah.
Also, if you just look at the boot sizes, it's all bigger, more material,
More
more,
about
more tangible
profiling
stuff
also, yeah.
from the drives, the PLCs, including all the software components around it, so you can get a full journey here from automation until digitalization, cybersecurity.
Yeah.
In Abyss, we focus much more on digital and on cybersecurity and on AI. Here it's broader. It's a broader audience. Nevertheless, you see a lot of familiar and faces companies
let's say
who
that,
really focus on both,
yeah.
and I think both are big names. Like I said, 2 years ago, I was here at Indonesian as well. You have different types of conversations, but still very focused. People who come here mostly have a good idea what they want to see,
Yeah.
and you see the same thing on Abyss. So there's an overlap, but you can't compare the kind of people you speak.
Welcome to the Indusruptiv and Friends podcast, your 30-minute traffic jam antidote, where technology, strategy, and economics are mixed, no nonsense, and in the right context. No geopolitical noise, no hype, no clickbait, just signal, no noise. Informal, but straight to the point, sharp, relevant, and pragmatic. And every stone you might trip over has already been turned over for you. This podcast is made in cooperation with Spotit. Your network secure and in peak condition. Protect against today's attack and prepare for the next ones. Visit spotit.be. In this automation fast forward series recorded live here at Indonesian 2026, we sit down with Erik the Nert from Spotit. Tell me, Erik, we went a long time since our cooperations, and just 2 days ago, Wednesday, we organized together with Palo Alto, Siemens, and end customer Unilever a debate on OT cybersecurity. So, Maybe before we start our Q&A, in a nutshell, who are you and how do you come on doing what you do now?
Oh.
Additionally, what's the role of you, as I presume you are an integrator?
Yeah. So thanks, Karl, for having me on the podcast. So as you mentioned, Erik de Nert from Spotit. Today I lead the network and security business unit for OT. So what we look at network and security, you have typically an IT side, but you also have an industrial side, what we then call OT and ICS side. And I'm responsible for that business unit. So with the team, we focus really on industrial companies, networking and security deep into the factory or in the critical infrastructure. And I'm doing that now since a bit more than a year with Spotit. And then before, because we know each other indeed for I think 7-8 years maybe already, I have a background in OT and IoT digitalization.
Are you an OT guy or are you an IT guy?
I started as an IT guy.
Yeah.
And my first job was in IT. But it was an interesting one because in pharmaceuticals, production environments.
But you were already in a production environment.
We were touching a lot of the production environments already for a broader region, for an EMEA region. So it made it very interesting. I remember when I was on call with the cell phone at the time. When we got a phone call in the middle of the night, it was typically to reboot a server in one of the most critical production factories. And you had to drop down, or at the night, you had to stop doing what you were doing, sleeping, of course, and start working on rebooting that specific server. So it was my first contact
that was your first
with the production environment.
Confrontation with the production environment.
And then afterwards, interestingly, so I was still IT, but more in centralization and virtualization. So Citrix, VMware, these kind of solutions I've been implementing, but also a lot for industrial companies. And what always struck me there is whenever you go into the production, it was always careful, we don't touch, and we make sure we keep running. Keep running was the main mantra. Whatever you changed had to come with a lot of change management from an IT perspective. So that always triggered me, and that also triggered me to start with at the time with Inimco. So to build my own solution, cloud-based, to solve those typical difficulties in industry when it comes to reporting, production efficiency reporting, energy efficiency.
There you were more on the strictly data science.
Yeah, mostly data centralization.
That was your kind of stuff. Yeah. So how did you suddenly roll into the security part?
If you look at the journey I did with Inimco, one of the main difficulties was to get the data. Get the data was a thing of knowing where data is. Is it in a PLC? Is it in the SCADA? Is it in an MES system? But also, is this connected to the network already or not? Is it still isolated?
Yeah.
If it's not connected, then you should get it connected to a network. Is it secure? And then the IT team got involved, and then typically companies who were totally not prepared for that, we suffered extreme delays in projects. And if I compare that to companies who were very well prepared and already had an OT cybersecurity journey and a networking journey before starting to digitalize, that made maybe the first proof of concept more difficult because you had more standards to adhere to. But on the other hand, when you started rolling out, it made it much, much easier because everything was already standardized according to best practices, according to frameworks, and everybody agreed on the way we were rolling out. So that always triggered me over the past 10 years. And there was an opportunity with Spotit. I know Spotit from when they were started 11 years ago.
It's already. I thought Spotit was a new company.
No, it exists for 11 years.
Okay.
It's 120, 130 people, specialists on network and security. A lot of industrial customers. We worked together or also in the past with them. And then the opportunity came to group all the OT network and security knowledge into one business unit. So that's where I got in touch again with one of the founders of Spotit.
So Spotit already exists for a while. Yeah. You got into it. You were working. It was a supplier of there where you work.
When I was still in digitalization, we worked with Inimco. Yeah, we worked with Spotit for penetration testing, for example, of applications to make sure that Nobody can get into a cloud application from the external world or from within the automation network towards data, etc. So we work together, but I know the founders already from when they were starting with Spotit. So I stayed in touch. And then the opportunity came to make a change in OT cybersecurity. So
went from the challenge or the problem into the opportunity.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, indeed.
Right. So now we know a little bit what is your profile and how your point of views are in a general way. Now let's make a shift to more what happened on Indonesian Wednesday. You were a little bit in the lead of the debate on OT cybersecurity that we organized Wednesday. It was all about the next generation manufacturing company who should tackle its complete IT/OT security by applying correct rules of people, processes, and technology. The PPT, the three biases, the three bases of a strategy. But first, maybe knowing that 24% of 24 or 26, I don't know, of the attacks in Belgium were really focused on manufacturing sites. I also learned that people are the most critical factor in that sense, that they are the threat, but they are also the solution. Knowing that, according to Agoria, some 6,000 people extra would immediately enter into this cybersecurity market. What's your opinion on the factor people, as maybe for the guys who are listening? Can we make a profile, the factor people as a risk, the people as a solution? Enlighten us.
But the people aspect has different dimensions. You have of course, what we think of the 6,000 we mentioned are profiles that we expect are necessary really to tackle all problems in the cybersecurity market, if I could call it like that. But on the other hand, if you walk in a factory, certainly in Belgium, but everywhere, there's still a lot of people involved, and we talk a lot about the cybersecurity experts, but it's the minority of the people is a cybersecurity expert.
Yeah.
The majority of the people are not. And then if you work in factory with more and more digitalization, with more and more applications, more and more connectivity, but with a low level of cybersecurity awareness typically, then the people aspect is becoming a bigger and a bigger risk, because I also said in the debate that a lot of incidents are starting by accidents. You have the same in safety. Something nobody does a safety incident
by purpose.
Mostly not by purpose. It's the same in cybersecurity. You don't click on purpose on the wrong link, but the consequences can be big. And there, the people aspect is people working in production should get much more awareness trainings on what is dangerous. How can I spot risk in cybersecurity risk? Can I just have a supplier plugging in his laptop on my network? Yes or no? Of course not. But its awareness is crucial, knowing what to see, what to spot, and also, and that's important, knowing how to report it then back to the team who is responsible for the cybersecurity. But then that's the second part of the people. The companies we work with should indeed have the sufficient manpower to handle the cybersecurity on IT and on the OT side. And that's then the second part of the search for people with the right skills and the right knowledge. But you have two sides. You have the skills, but you also have the awareness.
Yeah. Maybe two questions. You have the problem people as a risk. You have internal people, and then you have what do they call it, third-party risk, or that is everybody as a supplier or a servicer who logs in, logs out, whatever, doing stuff on your peripherals and computers and devices. What's the biggest risk? Is it the inside risk of people working in the company, or is it the third party who enters by any means, physically or otherwise, into your system?
In most cases, every door which is open, and that's also a virtual door, like a remote access, is a bigger risk. So if you look at, again, numbers, but I think more than half of the security incidents happen by some kind of remote access which is left open, or which was vulnerable, or bad
the problem
password.
with Jaguar. Sorry, I interrupted. The problem with Jaguar, who everybody's talking about
Yeah.
the Jaguar story. Was that a third party or?
the some of the insights on the forensics, but it's never confirmed.
Yeah.
But it indicates towards old credentials of remote access. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a username and a password which was known maybe by a previous hack, which was not locked and then could be exploited. So it was indeed coming from
comes from a third party,
unsecure third
from
party,
an unsecure third party. But on the other hand, in fact, if the internal people were more aware, maybe they never should have allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe to come a little bit
exactly.
more to the issue of the 6,000 people, according to Agoria, that the Belgian industry is sourcing for cybersecurity. What is the main problem? Is it the in-stream from people who do not want to work or get an indication in this sector, or
it's
how do you translate it?
The need for people is higher.
Yeah.
So we have the same type of people or same number of people graduating.
You have a constant in-stream,
but you need more people, because the
Okay.
problem becomes more complex. We also now have AI and the security of AI that comes on top of that. We have much more awareness, which is good that we see it here. We feel it here on Indumation, also on Abyss. There's much more awareness on cybersecurity and on OT cybersecurity, but that also means that you need more people to secure it, to be active in cybersecurity. So the same type of vacancies are getting filled in, but you need more people.
So you need more in-stream.
Yeah.
So are your suggestions then that schools and other education centers have to be more proactive in sensibilizing young people to go into that? Is it not sexy enough to get an accelerator in that?
Depending a bit on the domain, I think it's made much more attractive. You should see the number of people now in IT and in schools. It's much higher than when I was studying. So
you have defense,
and then you have defense now putting also a lot of attention on it. So you see much more attention. Of course, the attention we give now will only translate in more profiles in a few years. So it always takes time, and that's the thing with education. It takes time until those profiles get on the market and are sufficiently skilled to really be seen as an expert. So I do think what I see with I work sometimes with West, for example, also give some lectures already. The interest is there, the awareness is there, people are made aware, even in non-technical students, or for non-technical students. So I think there's a lot of awareness, a lot of attention being given. Of course, more is always better. But it's not. Yeah, you still need to follow get the right training, follow the right steps to be an expert. And if we say we lower the threshold, you will have more people, but maybe not with the right skills.
Yeah.
So that's
I was wondering then in that case, because you said that be aware that you do not lower the threshold. What is, according to you, and maybe for the young people listening, what is, according to you, the right mindset and profile for somebody who should come to work as in the industry as a cybersecurity specialist?
Well, if you look specifically in industry, if you really talk about OT cybersecurity, and I think it's necessary to have. You don't need to be a PLC programmer. Okay. No, but it is necessary that you have an interest, or you know what's going on a production environment. It's not a set of banking applications. It's a completely different world, and you need to be aware of the criticalities in production processes. So some level of good basis training of what is happening in the production environment. What is automation? What is digitalization in production? What does it mean? What is a business process? What is a production process? What are the risks in the production process, also to our safety environment? These kind of topics.
Other than special, you have IT cybersecurity, of course, which is the standard. Excuse me. Do you then have something like a specialty or a niche orientation in cybersecurity, which is dedicated to OT cybersecurity,
I think
or is that a
that's something you will see more and more.
Yeah.
Not yet, but I'm not so
But
familiar with the curricula of all the universities. But I think it's I don't think it's a choice course. I
Yeah.
think we do get it already for a part. But it's not something that you say, no, I study for OT
Yeah.
cybersecurity specialist. That's not, in my opinion, not
Well, it
there yet.
sounds obvious. Maybe when schools make their business model and they see that OT
Yep.
cybersecurity is really a niche with a lot of
Yep.
demands, that maybe they
Yep.
make that a specialization.
But you see more and more attention being
Okay.
brought to it. We see that also at some of the high school and the universities already. But one thing is important there. Some of the aspects you only learn with experience, and that's I think the most important thing there is the collaboration with companies, with organizations. I think that's the most important aspect to it. The theory is one thing, but the real knowledge comes from doing it.
Practicing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now we talked about people and how companies should start with OT IT. On the debate, I mean, with the champions team, that's the part number one of the puzzle. Tell me more about the processes the company should check as an integrator. What are the steps? I suppose they start inventorizing all the risks, score and rank them. I thought so, and I look for a compliant NIS2 incident response plan. Am I missing something, or maybe for the listeners, you bring it into some frame?
Yeah, we typically see. We always say it's a 6-step approach that we have, depending on the maturity that you already have, and it's the 6 steps that prepare you on one hand for NIS2 compliancy, but should never be a check in the box, because it also helps you to become much more resilient on operationally and on cybersecurity level. And it starts indeed with having a good visibility on the assets, the processes, and also their vulnerabilities. It's a combination of technology.
Can they do that themselves, or do they at that stage already need somebody who is consulting them to have a framework, a methodology?
Typically I would say everything can be done by the company itself, more or less, but it's also, you have to look at first of all the time to do it, to start. You need to learn that there's a learning curve, and you need to have a scanning solution in place. That's a more technology aspect, and you need to. The third thing, and that's the most important, you to do an interpretation of the results of such an assessment, or visibility assessment.
And that's not only the scanning technology, but you have to
because you
somebody
get
who's able to.
You maybe get a list of 2,000 red flagged risks and vulnerabilities, but you need to be able to do an interpretation of that. And that's a combination of what is the production process, what are the risks in the process, what is the biggest risk for the company, so it's the typical crown jewel approach, what is the most critical asset for the company, and what is the risk related to that, and then make a prioritization in what you detect in the scanning exercise, do an inventarization of all the assets that you have, but also talk with the people who are responsible in the production environment and who decides, who approves. So that's process, and you need to have a good view on the process as well, and that combined can give you a good roadmap. Okay, what after such an exercise, what is my next step? And there we see that the help of a provider like Spotit really accelerates that journey for the end customer, without them having to do a huge investigation already in technology.
If you do it inside, and it takes a long time. Time is money. Internal costs will not be built. I mean, built by making bills. You can not really account what the internal cost is in your overhead of people being constantly busy with that scanning and prioritizing and analyzing. So you speed up the process. Of course, you're a billing factor. In that case, you have to bill everything what you're doing. So then we are at step 3 of the 6, or
still at step 1.
Still step 1. Okay.
What comes out of that exercise? It's an action plan, prioritization, and a roadmap. what we've seen the past year, and that a lot of that was also triggered by NIS2, is most probably you heard already about it, network segmentation. Having a clear split between the IT and the OT network. Splitting doesn't mean they can't communicate, but splitting means firewall-wise, you have under control how they communicate, what is allowed, what is not allowed. I think that's important. And then segmentation goes further really down to the individual asset in the PLC level, the machine level, the production line level. You do a zoning, a segmentation exercise, and you control all the type of network communication between all those different zones and assets,
Zones,
and you give them
layers. You go deeper,
layers
deeper into the shells, in the layers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you group them typically functionally by type of production or production area. Give them risk scores. Station at the end of a process. If you have 20 packing stations, maybe the risk there is lower than completely in the beginning, where you have just one entry point of all your raw materials and something happens there. So there you have to, every company has to evaluate that for themselves. What is my biggest risk in this process? And then the zoning exercise is a combination of knowing that risk and then more the technical aspects, but also thinking about later on. I can create a plan with 500 individual zones, but can I still maintain that? That's also the pragmatic part that we have to take into a balancing act together with the customer. And there also the experience of the provider comes in place to make it really a pragmatic exercise, which is feasible to maintain afterwards. Another typical one that always comes to the surface is OT remote access. So how do my suppliers get access to my production environment? Is it a wild grove of different solutions and every machine builder provides his own solution? Or as a company, do you have one solution in place which is accepted and also controlled by you as an end customer, but fulfills the needs of every external supplier when it comes to functionality and user experience?
I remember in the debate, it was you or Bruno from Unilever who said, you as a customer have to be in the lead. It's not the vendor of the devices who is saying what you have to accept. It's you who have to describe what you want, what you need, and they have to comply with it.
Correct. That's correct. It's I think it's responsibility of the end customer organization to really say what the rules are and include that even in the procurement process.
Is the vendor willing to do that, or is that your job?
That will be, well, it's in some cases our job to sit in between. That happens quite a lot. And then mostly you come to an acceptable solution. But more and more, and I actually hope that really becomes more and more with the regulation, with NIS2, but also Cyber Resilience Act coming, is that the security by design also on the vendor side becomes higher. But as an organization, you still need to have on the demand side, you also need to make sure that your suppliers are compliant to your process, and that's your responsibility. And literally in NIS2, it is your responsibility as a company. To have your suppliers under control also when it comes to cybersecurity and remote access. So you can't get around that responsibility. Saying that, but I don't know the remote access solutions and they just force the solution on me, but I don't control it. It's not sufficient anymore. You need to act on it. You need to take the necessary step. And that's where we see as a provider that we can be very helpful with the solutions that we provide, which fulfill the needs of both IT, cybersecurity, and the end user, and by using very dedicated OT-oriented solutions and not something very high-level IT-based, which will never be accepted. So also their important role to play as a provider. So that's past year, two things. It's segmentation, remote access were really hot topics, and then you come to the more advanced steps, further deep down segmentation. You can continue that work. It's a continuous improvement. And then you go also towards what we typically see a lot also is that the networking infrastructure, so the basic switching is also not in a good shape and not highly available. If you pull one cable, half of your production stops. So these kind of things also come to the surface. There's a networking aspect, and then you go more towards monitoring. I want to permanently monitoring the threats the vulnerabilities in my production network. That's then the steps afterwards where you have specific technology as well to handle that. And then if you move on, there's also what we as a provider can do for our customers, and then you come more towards the outsourcing of the operational aspects. So the management of all that technology and all those processes. Is it being done? Is it up to date? Do we need to patch?
The process afterwards?
Yeah, that's a managed service that
you have to
provide
intervene,
that.
and then you have to maintain the whole story.
Yeah.
Does that include also the people? You have the maintenance, of course, but do people constantly have to be retrained, or how?
On our side, as a provider, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, you as a provider or as an integrator is it one of your servicing then also that you retrain people at the customer?
Yeah, different levels. If you see in the operational, I also mentioned in the debate. Yes, we as Spotit, we provide managed services on the networking, but also on the security. So permanently monitoring all the security aspects and the threats inside a network. When there is somewhere a malware or a hacker active in a network, then we detect it, we report it to the end customer, and then we have the incident response plan where we talked about kicking in. The earlier to detect, the better. But if we detect, we need to also have somebody at the customer side to understand the risk and to know what to do at that point in time. So yes, there's a part of training involved there. Should they be deep down experts? No, but to a certain extent, they need to be knowledgeable. We give that kind of trainings. We also give technical trainings. We also give awareness training. So yes, we
on
train
every level,
we train
on operator
on every
level,
from management to operators
even to supply chain
yes, correct. We do all those steps in between. So training, yes, it's a very important aspect, both on our own engineers, but also on our counterparts at the customer. They need to be knowledgeable, and that's the best way of working.
So we were a little bit thinking around or sparring around about people and processes. Well, of course, you have the latter part, technology, but what I'm always wondering, many of your integrations do not happen in the ideal situation. I mean, not everybody is starting from a blank page with a new factory, with new devices, with standardized things, and everything is directly as it should be working. Seems complicated to roll out technology in some cases where more than 20 years old OT workflow is still having his presence, which should be still running, but on the other hand must be isolated, while other new connected machines already are maybe AI monitored and secured. Maybe it's a very great discrepancy. But what are the main technological challenges for a small? I'm talking now about small and medium businesses. How should, according to you as an integrator, they be sourcing vendors? It's a long question, I know. Yeah. It takes some nanoseconds for Erik to think.
To digest.
Yeah, to digest. I know.
I think it's it always starts with the risk.
Yeah.
Big company, small company, you need to know your biggest risks. That's important, and then start acting according to those biggest risks. Of course, at a certain point in time, you will need to implement some level of technology to secure your biggest risk, your most important asset, your most important IP, whatever. So you will need to do at a certain point in time an investment.
What banks are you choosing for your bucks? Because we were talking in the debate also about you don't need an expensive Rolls-Royce technology if you only use 1% of the technology.
Yep.
So
the best thing is, I always say, it is starting with the risk, and then from those risks, start with the basics. We typically see companies starting, or that's also an advice we give, starting top down. So what I mean there is start from your IT towards your production network. That's one aspect. That means firewalling in between, but in firewalling you have a huge range of budget choices. Um, of course, you need to have certain minimal aspects in place. And if those minimal aspects cover your risk, then that's acceptable. But it's really a matter of risk accepting risks and maybe some remaining risk if they are under control. So that's going from IT to OT, because most of the attacks come somewhere from internet external world. And so you need to have that part under control. And then you have the external suppliers. So then we talk about remote access, but there are typically not the highest cost solutions. So you can cover a big part of your risk when it comes to remote access from suppliers by not that expensive solutions.
Oh, no. We're talking, of course, about technologies and budgets, Erik. But it won't be by accident. But I'm always wondering. We have in the debate. We have Siemens. We have Palo Alto. We have you as an integrator, and of course the client. I'm always, as an outsider, thinking: is an integrator using Palo Alto and Siemens because hello, are you using or proposing Palo Alto and Siemens as a standard because they are so flexible, also in budgets from the minimum to the top they can cover it, or
every supplier has certain ranges from technology that you provide. We work with Palo Alto, with Siemens, with Cisco, with Nozomi, with Xona for remote access. So we as a provider, we do a lot of work to really evaluate all those technologies. Do they make sense in the ideal architecture that you should have?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you know the ideal or the best practice and the blueprint, then you can start looking at, okay, do I need to make budgetary trade-offs or not? But within every vendor, you have a range of solutions. Also from a budget perspective, that can be looked at. But we as a provider then have to also look, okay, does it check all the boxes from a security perspective in this ideal blueprint architecture, yes or no? We do have situations where we work with customers that a part of their network is already there. They already did an investment past year, for example, in other technology that we can perfectly support, maintain, operationalize that. So it's not that we say we
get out of it with all the other old stuff, and we're going to put new stuff because we like to put new stuff.
We do our assessment work and we propose a roadmap. We also look at what is your current install base and what is also your plan towards the future. Do you say I already chose for vendor A and I want to continue with that? Then that's fine. We take that into account into our plan. So that's typically how we work. So we never say throw away what you have and start from scratch. No, start with the basics, look at your risks, and also start with the people aspect. Certainly,
this in fact we are already at the key takeaways of
Nert, sorry.
That's a good point. So then I don't have to ask the question you're giving. As a wrap up of your key takeaway, you just give it for people, process, and technology.
The people is the awareness part. Is something that if you also combine it with how much budget do I need to train people? Yeah, not that much, but it's a big risk that you can cover by giving a good training, by giving good awareness, and then it's a matter of having your process, but then I look also knowing what you have inside your organization, knowing your risks, knowing your vulnerabilities. That's definitely a step that you have to take. And from that point, you know your risk, you know your assets, you have people who are more trained and more aware. That makes it also easier. And certainly if you look at management level, it makes it also easier to look at, okay, what budget do I need now from a technology and from a implementation and monitoring and management perspective afterwards? What kind of budget do I need to do that? If the awareness is there, it makes it much easier to defend that budget. Okay. If the awareness is not there at your director level or your management level or board level, you can throw budget what you want, and they will always choose.
You're filling an empty pit or an endless empty pit.
Exactly. So for me, that's the starting point. Is indeed awareness and visibility is the starting point.
Final question. I know it's one of these cliche questions, but who the hell is responsible in an industrial company finally for a good and long-term OT cybersecurity responsibility or rollout? Who is the person? Some people say it's a CISO. Some people say maybe you was better talk to the COO and plant manager because they does have more OT insights. What's your opinion on that?
If you look at cybersecurity, because we talk about cybersecurity here, I think the CISO is the should be because it's not the case yet. But the CISO, in my opinion, should be the person who has the view on what do I need to do on IT and on the OT side. Strategically, but also roadmap wise, where do we need to go? But the CISO should have the type of profile we talked about yesterday, the IT OT bridge function, hero, whatever you want to call it, should have this kind of people to implement, to report back, to make sure that the strategy is followed throughout the whole organization.
You have to re-educate the CISO.
Well, it's
the hero CISO that
but you see that in a lot of coverage around CISO, that the CISO role should also cover the OT part. Not everybody will agree with me, but that's how I see it. I think it's important. Cybersecurity, also a hacker will not stop and say, okay, now I'm in IT, but that's OT, I will not continue. Well, that's not how it works. And the other way around, it doesn't work like that. So you need to have, and that's an important one also in real incidents, you need to have end-to-end visibility, detection capabilities, but also traceability, and that covers OT and IT. So if you have an incident, but you don't have one person overlooking both IT and OT, in an incident you will have a big problem.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's a hacker doesn't stop at the barrier. They don't care if it's IT or OT.
Stop at the barrier. It's not an IT or OT issue. That's not relevant for him. It's all about awareness and about how do we call it? The possibility to breach into something anywhere, if it's the device on OT or it's an IT environment. Yep. Okay, I know you have a tight schedule. You have to. It's Friday, but you have to do other stuff than sparring with Indusruptiv and friends. Erik, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, more on Indusruptiv and friends on YouTube and Spotify. And please don't click the like button. Be a big boy or a great girl and hit the subscribe button. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice one.
Thank you.